welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I've studied and some study tips for pharmacology and foundations, which sometimes it can be called fundamentals, but my school calls it foundations and I'm pretty sure they're the same thing. So let's see, starting with foundations, just because it was not like easy, it's a lot of critical thinking. So for foundations, we also had a simulation lab, a skills lab, and a clinical. For my quarter, since COVID was still a big thing right now, but because of that, some of us had in-person clinicals and some of us had virtual clinicals. So I had virtual clinicals, and if you've seen in my other vlogs, I've kind of shown you guys like what my virtual clinical was. It was just, they'd give us a patient and it'd be like just kind of like a virtual game. It's not a game, but like kind of like a virtual game, and you like give the patient medications and like follow like a head to toe and do like the vital signs and all that stuff. So it's like what you would do if you were in a patient's room and they give you information like the S-bar from the previous shift, and then you would do what was needed for that patient for virtual. So that was my virtual clinical. Then for skills lab, we had the last 5 weeks of my quarter, and we got to learn, to me, they felt like CNA skills because I've done them before, but also not everyone has learned these skills. So I think it was really helpful for those who haven't learned or gone to like CNA type school, but they were more of like bathing a person, like peri-care, putting on elastic stockings, ambulating a patient to a chair, just those type of skills. So we learned like 6, and then we did a skills check off at the end. And then for my simulation lab, it was kind of like the virtual clinical, but we were in person. It's like a mannequin patient where they can talk to you, and it has like respirations, heart rate, blood pressure, like had all the things, and they can talk to you. So I thought that was really cool to get an experience like that, and we're gonna be doing that throughout the quarter. So I really liked simulation lab because it's preparing me for when I actually go into a patient's room. We didn't have like a patient code, so I'm hoping like in the future, I think that's gonna happen, to see like what would be like in that situation. And there'd be like the primary nurse, the secondary nurse, and there could be a family member, documenter, all that stuff. So part of it was in person, and then part of it was on Zoom. You just watch the group. So next quarter, we're gonna, I think, pretty sure be all in person, which is gonna be super nice. But anyways, for foundations, those were the things we also had. And then we also had lecture, and lecture was a lot of critical thinking based. I don't want to say it was like common sense, but like the answer would stand out a lot, but sometimes I would struggle with exams because I would focus on pharm a lot. So I'd be like, oh, I understand that already, and then I get to the test, be like, oh my god, what was it actually? So it's just critical thinking, using your assessment, using your nursing process, and like the assessments process too. So we had lecture in person and then online. So for that, I'd bring my iPad with me to school. This is how I would take notes. I said that in my other classes or other videos about how I take notes for classes. But for foundations, she would post the lectures, I would download them as a PDF and all that, and I would just write notes on them in class. I would just go through that every week, and then, which was really helpful for her, she made us a study guide, so what points to focus on a lot, and that helped me so much because the first exam we didn't have that, and then after that we started doing that, and it was so helpful. And we also moved our exams to the next day instead of the same day as pharm, so I wasn't stressed out as much. So I thought the study guides were really helpful. If your professor focuses a lot on a point, make sure you star it and all that, because it might be on the test. A lot of the times she would kind of help us be like, that might be on a test, or this would be really good to know, because then I would be like, okay, star that, that's good to know for the exam and even in the future as a nurse. So that's really how I was gonna show you like an example, but I guess it's kind of hard because there's not much I really did for that class. It was just write on the PowerPoints, critical thinking, and making sure you understand like important information that the professor goes over as well. So now moving on to pharm. So pharmacology, tough class, hardest quarter I've been in. Like I said in my other video, I'm so glad to be done with it, and I'm glad I passed it, but it was tough. And for me to figure out what worked was a little rough at the beginning, because the first exam was just more of like pharmacokinetics, understanding like how drugs are processed in the body and that stuff. And then the next test was actually the drugs, so we weren't sure how we were going to be tested on and how the questions were going to be worded, because from the first exam to the next exam, one was about how it's absorbed and like the metabolism digestion part, and then the other part is about the drug. So what our professors recommended, they gave us like a drug guide, or not drug guide, they gave us like diamond drugs, where like drugs that would be seen on the HESI or the NCLEX, or just like important ones that are in the nursing field that we should focus on. So at first they gave us an example of a drug card, and I started with that, and I actually made it all. Like, it's so much, and I thought this information was not helpful at all. The way we got this Davis drug guide, and I just went through here, so like I felt like it took me forever to do. Like I wasn't even studying, I was just doing that, and it was not helpful. I was just going through all the pages, finding out all the like information for each section, like what the indication is, like the routes of administration, some side effects, adverse effects, like all that stuff, and it just took way too long. So I ended up finding out a way that helped me a lot more than doing that. It's kind of like the same thing as a drug card, but I took what was most important about the drug. So I took like information that they gave us, and then like adverse effects, the type of drugs that are in that classification, contraindications, interactions, and if there's like toxicity or other important stuff, and I would make them into my own drug cards. So I made these on PowerPoint, and each slide would either be the classification and then all those drugs within the classification, and I just go through for whatever chapters we had and what drugs we needed to know. I would just focus on what they said in the PowerPoint. I think that helped me a lot because after going through the test, they would focus on drugs in their PowerPoint, and if I were to study extra ones and they weren't on the test, like why do I need to add more to my stress? So I only focused mostly on the PowerPoint. There was one teacher, we had two teachers. One teacher would go over kind of like the physiology of the drug, and the other would actually go in depth about like the nursing side of it. So I focused on her lectures more than his. I would still watch his and take notes, but mostly hers I took all my information from. And I also read this book. This book also came with a study guide too. So I would make my drug cards. Well, first I would listen to their lectures, then I would make my drug cards. Then after I made my drug cards, before I printed them out, I would read through the chapters that we had for that week, and then write down any information that the book said about the drug that wasn't said in the lecture. And I would do that, and then I'd finally print it, and then I'd go back through the book again to make sure I understood everything. The book helped me a lot, and then also I would add my own notes, and I printed out my drug cards, added more notes, blah, blah, blah. Towards the end, this one's probably a good one. I figured out finally, like, because I'm color coding, I color coded like everything, but towards the end of the quarter, I figured out how to color coordinate my drugs. So like my antibiotics right here, all of them would be like a type of blue. This isn't gonna work for everyone, but this worked for me a lot. I know them are all blue, and I feel like when I'm taking my exam, I could see it, so it would help me remember what that type of drug was. And then I would go, what was next? These are the antivirals. They were all like an orangey color, and then the HIV drugs were all like a green color. So I would just like group my drug cards into the week we had an exam. So like we had 9 exams. So this is another week, this is a different week, and I just paper clipped them. It helped me a lot more be more organized and focus on the drugs and just remember them that way because they were all together. So that's how I did my drug card. Not everyone did drug cards, not everyone has their own way of studying. For me, making my own type of drug cards, not the way they told me to make them, helped me study the material a lot better. So I would take my notes on my iPad, then I would make drug cards, read the book, and add little points, print them out, study them nonstop. Like we finished like lecture Wednesdays, and then we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to study and have all those other like skills lab, simulation lab, all the other assignments due within those 5 days. And I would make sure I get everything done Thursday. I would study Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday I had class, and then I would just review after class for PHARM. We had our exams on Tuesday. So I dedicated my studying so much. Like not everybody has to study this much, but for me to make sure I do well, I studied Friday through Sunday all day. I would barely give myself breaks. I would do like the 45-minute study, a 15-minute break. Sometimes there were days where I could not do it and I would take a longer break than I needed. But honestly, I didn't spend just 3 hours reviewing. I spent the whole 3 days reviewing. I would probably call it a day by like 7 or 8 o'clock, and then the rest of the night would be for myself and not focusing on school. But then I'd wake up, start probably like 10 to 7, 10 to 8 would be my time frame of studying for PHARM, Monday through Sunday, or Friday through Sunday. So that's what I did. And I also I watched Simple Nursing on YouTube. They were so helpful. Just like the little tips and tricks that they have for like warfarin was like Warkin, like, you know, it's warfarin, and then like the antidote is vitamin K, and then I don't know, just like the little tips, and like opioids, low and slow, like constipation, low heart rate, low blood pressure, all that stuff, low respirations you gotta watch out for. So just like the little tips helped me, and then like the drawings that they had on there, and that's when I would write into, let's see if I find one so I can actually show you guys. Okay, so like this was one where I have extra writing on, and here because those were like things that they talked about or like the book talked about. I would do the study guide for the PHARM book, the end of the questions, end of the chapter there was like questions. I would do those, study guide book, each chapter that I had that week. We also had EAQs. It just kind of helped me give myself like what a question could look like, and I love taking extra like test questions kind of to review them because I think that helps me study a lot more to know what I understand. And sometimes I would go through a section, like a chapter. Sorry, this is really long and jumbled, but I just want to make sure you guys get the best tips that I have that worked for me do really well in PHARM. But I would take a chapter, go through it, I would read the book, and then I would answer the questions at the end of the chapter. Then I'd move on to the next chapter, do the same thing, blah, blah, blah. And then when I get to the end of the day, if I did only 3 chapters that day, I would take the study guide or EAQs and do like 10 EAQs or 10 study guide questions. I'd go through them, see what I knew, and if I didn't know something, I'd make sure I go back and understand or like jot that down, like I didn't understand this. Go back and look at that before the exam or type thing. I don't know, it was very jumbled. I will try to write in the description like a better explanation if this seemed all jumbled to you guys of what I did and how I studied, but I feel like I gave you guys the most points. And we also had dosage calc. For me, I'm pretty good at math, so it wasn't a struggle at all for me. I understood. The only thing that was hard was the conversions, but that was just memorization. I feel like I've known those for so long, but then I just always forget and like not remember them properly. So I just had to memorize those, and then we had like, you have to get 100% at the end of the quarter and on your dosage calc final, and then you don't have to take it anymore, or not like, you have 3 attempts, and the first time you have 3 attempts to get 100%. I got it on the first try, which I was really happy about. I didn't have to focus on it. So I just review your math, check out some other YouTube people online about who go over like nursing and all that stuff. That's really helpful. So those are my pharmacology and foundations / fundamentals tips. If you have any questions, you can comment anything down below. If it was difficult to understand, I got you, but that is all I have and how I studied and some study tips for those 2 classes. And next quarter I'm in med-surg and health informatics or something like that, but it's med-surg 1. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.